Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Friends. It was a super sunny day and Dolly the ladybird sat staring out of the window. I'm going to eat breakfast, she thought, and then I'll go for a walk in the meadow. She decided to take her wheelbarrow with her. I wonder if I'll find something interesting to take home in my wheelbarrow, she thought to herself. Goodness me, said Dolly. What a lovely red cherry. That's just perfect for my lunch. She tried to lift the cherry into her wheelbarrow, but it was far too heavy. Too heavy for one little ladybird. Just then, Berry the snail appeared. Why the sad face, ladybird? Asked Berry. I can't lift this cherry into my wheelbarrow, Dolly replied. Don't cry, I'll help you, Berry said with a smile. And the two of them picked the cherry up with no trouble at all. Dolly set straight off home with the juicy cherry. Now it was Berry who looked sad. Don't you want to share the cherry with me? The snail said, and stamped his little foot. I did help you. But I found it first, Dolly snapped. You're not having any, it's mine. Berry was very upset. The two of them started to fight over the cherry. It's mine, shouted Dolly. That's not fair, Berry shouted back. They pushed and pulled the cherry until it split in two. Berry and Dolly plopped to the ground. They were very surprised when a green grub crawled out of the cherry.
What have you done to my cherry?
He grumbled.
That cherry was my home. Oh, don't look so upset,
the grub said.
I know where we can find plenty more. You can eat cherries while I find a new home for myself.
Dolly helped the grub into her wheelbarrow, and they all set off to look for the cherry tree. When they arrived, they found the ground around the cherry tree was covered in ripe red fruit. Berry and Dolly jumped for joy. The grub fell fast asleep while Berry and Dolly munched away on fresh cherries, and the time soon flew by. It was getting late, so they decided to go home, but this time with 2 cherries. One for Dolly and one for Berry. The sun was setting by the time they reached Berry's house. They took his cherry out of the wheelbarrow and said goodbye. Berry went inside and waved to Dolly from the window. Berry soon fell fast asleep after such an exciting day. The little snail dreamt about playing in cherries with Dolly and eating until their tummies were full. Then Dolly got back home and went straight to bed. From that day on, Berry and Dolly were the best of friends.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
The Yellow Ladybird. The spring had come at last. Dolly decided it was time to tidy up her flower garden. She got her spade and a rake and tied a pretty dotted scarf around her head. She had only just stepped outside when she heard someone groaning behind her house. "Christopher, your wing looks broken," the little ladybird exclaimed.
The sun shone in my eyes and I flew straight into a tree. I really hurt myself,"
the canary said. Just then, Berry the snail and Stanley the stag beetle arrived. "Stanley, please go and get Dr. Owl. Christopher's wing's broken," Dolly said, taking control. Dr. Owl soon arrived. It looks like a very bad break," he said seriously. Then carefully and slowly he bandaged Christopher's broken wing.
"You know, Dolly," Christopher said one day, "there's a little ladybird living on the island I come from."
"Really? Is she red with black dots like me?" Dolly asked excitedly. "And what's her name?"
"She's called Katie. Her back isn't red, it's yellow, but her dots are black like yours. She looks a lot like you. Why don't you come to meet her when my wing's better?"
"That sounds like a super idea. Can Berry come too?"
"Of course he can. There's enough room for both of you on my back."
A few days later, Dr. Owl came to visit the injured canary. He was happy to say that Christopher's wing was as good as new. The canary thanked the owl for his help, put Berry and Dolly on his back, and headed for his island home. They soon found themselves flying over a large lake with a little island in the middle of the water.
"Can you see it? We're flying to that island. My nest is on top of the highest tree. Hold on tight, we're coming in to land."
Christopher landed perfectly, and Berry and Dolly climbed down. "You can't catch me!" shouted a bright beetle in an orange dress. She was talking to the tiny fleas running after her. "Watch out!" Dolly shouted, but the girl beetle ran right into her. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to knock you over. My name's Katie. Who are you?" "Oh, you're Katie. We're here to see you. My name's Dolly, and I've come a long way to meet my ladybird cousin." "Ladybird cousin?" Katie asked with a puzzled smile. "Yes, you've got black dots just like me, except you're yellow instead of red." "Wow, you're right," the yellow ladybird said. "Come with me and I'll show you my house," Katie said. As soon as they saw Katie's house, Berry and Dolly started to laugh. "My house looks exactly like this, but mine's red." Berry, Dolly and Katie took a long walk around the island. "There's the pine forest with the little stream running next to it. We built the bridge ourselves," Katie explained with pride. "And what's that in the middle of the meadow? It looks like a slide." "That's right. It's a special flower slide. Come with me. I'll show you." "Can I have a go?" "Of course you can. Follow me," Katie said and slid down on the curvy slide. Berry, Dolly and Katie slid down the slide again and again until it started to get dark.
"It's getting late. Come on, you two, I'll take you home," Christopher said.
Dolly and Katie swapped headscarves as a parting present. "Have a safe trip home," Katie told them. "Do visit me again sometime." It was getting very late by the time Christopher arrived at Dolly's dotty house. The moon shone and the sky was full of sparkling stars.
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
Sunflowers. Berry and Dolly planted sunflower seeds in the spring and watered the seeds until little shoots soon appeared. The shoots grew into little plants that grew into big plants. Then buds appeared that opened into lovely yellow flowers in the summer. Hooray! The friends cheered when they saw the lovely flowers. Berry noticed that the flowers pointed one way in the morning and another in the afternoon.
Look, Dolly, they're turning their heads.
That's because they always turn to face the sun. That's why they're called sunflowers. When the sun went down, the sunflowers hung their heads and went to sleep. All the forest friends were woken the next morning by shouts of panic. "Oh dear, what's happened? Our lovely sunflowers!" Dolly cried.
Who could have done such a terrible thing? Berry wept. Someone has chewed through the stems of our sunflowers.
Flutter washed their wounds with fresh dew, and Dolly bandaged them all with soft blades of grass. The sunflowers slowly started to smile again. The friends all gathered in Balthazar's house to decide what to do next.
What are we going to do? Berry sobbed.
"Someone needs to stand guard at night. I'll go first," said Dolly bravely. The little ladybird hid quietly behind the bush and kept a close eye on the sunflowers. She didn't have to wait for very long. A hamster soon appeared and started to chew at the stems of the sunflowers. Dolly jumped out from her hiding place and shouted, "Shoo!" This surprised the hamster and he ran away. He didn't come back again that night. Flutter guarded the sunflowers the next night, and then Balthazar, and then Stanley. Soon it was Berry's turn. The little snail hid quietly behind the bush and waited. He waited and waited until he eventually fell asleep. He wasn't even woken by the sound of the hamster chewing at the sunflower stems.
Oh dear, I must have fallen asleep. I didn't guard the sunflowers,
Berry sobbed when he saw the sadly sagging sunflowers the following morning. Berry fell asleep. He slept while the hamster chewed the stems again. "Why do you all look so sad?" asked Dr. Owl. Dolly told him what had happened to the sunflowers. "I think you should talk to the hamster. Ask him not to hurt the sunflowers," Dr. Owl suggested.
There he is. He's asleep in the bush,
Berry whispered to the others. The noise woke the sleeping hamster. The hamster looked scared of the friends and the friends felt frightened of the hamster. "There's no need to be scared of us. We just wanted to ask you not to chew our sunflowers."
But then, what will I eat?
The hamster told them.
We'll bring you plenty of apples and carrots to nibble on. Where do you live?
The little snail asked.
I haven't got a house of my own,
the hamster said sadly.
You haven't got a house?
Balthazar repeated in surprise.
Then we'll build you one.
Dolly brought apples, Berry brought seeds, Flutter brought raisins, Balthazar brought dandelion leaves, and Stanley brought carrots.
My new house is really super,
the hamster said with a cheery smile.
And thank you so much for all the yummy food.
The hamster never chewed the sunflower stems again, and they smiled happily at Berry and Dolly and all their friends for the rest of the summer. Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today? Christmas. It was a crisp winter day and Berry the snail and Dolly the ladybird went into the woods to look for a bunch of Christmas greenery. Look, Berry, this little tree got knocked over in the storm. Let's take it home. We can decorate it for Christmas. Hooray! We'll have a real Christmas tree, Berry shouted. They lifted the tree up and saw a centipede sheltering under its branches. Help me, Berry. Let's put him on the sledge. He's hurt himself and looks very cold. We can take him to my house. They lifted the centipede carefully onto the sledge. Will he be all right? Berry worried. Of course he will, Dolly reassured her friend. When they got home, they put the poorly centipede to bed. Dolly made him hot tea, and Berry read him caterpillar stories from a storybook. Next morning, the centipede opened his eyes and smiled a little smile. He got better every day, and soon he was healthy again. Dolly asked him to stay. "You're so nice. Don't go, centipede. Spend Christmas with us." "Well, thank you. I'd love to stay." "But what should we get him for Christmas?" Dolly wondered. "What would make a centipede happy?" Dolly told him her idea. The little snail nodded excitedly. Berry and Dolly went to see the ants. The queen ant welcomed them with open arms. Dolly told them what kind of present she thought of. "We can make anything you want," said the queen. Christmas came, and Berry and Dolly made a tree stand. As night fell, Berry gave Dolly her present. "Merry Christmas, Dolly." "Thank you, Berry," the ladybird said. She was delighted. "It's beautiful." Dolly was very happy and wound the pretty ribbon around the tree. "Merry Christmas to you too," Dolly said, and handed Berry his present. "Sparklers, super! Let's put them on the tree." They lit the sparklers, and crackling sparks danced around the Christmas tree. The glittering light attracted lots of tiny fireflies, and each brought a Christmas decoration. Even the centipede helped to trim the tree. Soon the ants arrived carrying a parcel. They handed it to Berry and Dolly. "This is our present to you, centipede," Berry said to him. "Merry Christmas." "Boots!" he shouted happily. "They'll keep your little feet warm when you're walking in the snow," Dolly explained. The friends' celebrations went on late into the night. There was Eddie the potato beetle, Stanley the stag beetle, Alfonso the cricket, and Rosita the rose beetle. The fireflies built a big snowman with the little ants. They all sang and danced around the Christmas tree. Flutter the butterfly came to celebrate with them. Zephyr the dragonfly danced with Leapy the grasshopper. Berry and Dolly skipped around with Balthazar the bee. When the party was over, the centipede cleaned his boots and put them on a shelf. "What a wonderful day I've had. It's a shame that Christmas only comes once a year."
Berry and Dolly say, what will we learn today?
The Carnival. Winter was nearly over, and the forest friends were sitting in Dolly's house. "It's time we started getting ready for the carnival," Flutter the butterfly said.
"What are you going to dress up as?"
Berry asked. "It's a secret," Flutter answered. "You have to keep your costume a secret so that we can surprise each other at the carnival."
"You're right. Let's go home and get started. We've only got a few days left,"
Balthazar said. Berry quickly made up his mind. He decided to dress up as a mushroom. He used a white sheet for a cape and made a hat out of a red bowl. He painted white dots on the bowl. Dolly made a flower costume. She cut leaves out of green paper and sewed them on a green blanket. That was her dress, and she made petals out of purple paper. Balthazar the bee and Betty the bumblebee worked together. Balthazar dressed up as a devil, and Betty dressed up as an angel. Bubble the baby beetle sat in his hammock
and started to make his lion costume. The lights were on in every home in the forest on the night before the carnival. Everybody was working on their costume and busy preparing for the celebrations the following day. Then the big day arrived. The forest friends decided to have the carnival at Stanley's house. They all worked hard and decorated the stag beetle's home with coloured streamers and balloons. While this was going on, Rosita the rose beetle was busy making delicious cakes at her house. Dolly, Leapy and Eddie the potato beetle all lent a hand. Then the time came for them all to put their costumes on. Stanley dressed up as a dice and waited for his friends. The first to arrive were Berry and Dolly. He was dressed as a mushroom and she was dressed as a flower. Then Balthazar came as a little devil and Betty as an angel, with Flutter in a crab costume. Leapy looked just like a cactus. Bubble was dressed as a lion. Eddie was a chef and Rosita was a bunch of grapes. Her dress was covered in shiny balloons. The firefly was dressed as a pencil and the flea was an octopus. Sam came as a soldier and one of the little ants was dressed up as a pancake. Suddenly, Zephyr the dragonfly burst in crying, "It's gone! My beautiful princess dress has disappeared! I washed it and I hung it out to dry, but the wind blew it away!" Zephyr sobbed, and the others tried to comfort her. "I don't need my soldier hat, I've got a sword," Sam Snail suggested. "No, that's for boys. I had a lovely princess dress, but the wind blew it away." "We'll make you a new costume," Leapy said. "A sun costume." Zephyr liked this idea very much. "This yellow curtain will make a great cape," Dolly shouted. "And these yellow pieces of paper can be the sun's rays," Stanley said, and took some of the streamers down. They cut, glued, sewed and stitched, and the beautiful sun costume was ready in no time. "I can lend you my little lantern. A pencil doesn't really need a lantern," laughed the firefly. "Thank you," Zephyr said. She was so happy she blushed. The forest friends danced and sung all night and agreed Zephyr had the most special costume of all. As what could be more special than a sun that shone at night?